if you don't mind. Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Nayanam Namaskritya Puram Chaiva Bhagavatam Devam Saraswati Vyasam Tato Jayam Udhiraya.
Before reciting the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, a prayer needs a context. One should offer respectful obeisances to my regular attendance in classes of the Bhagavatam and my regular service to spirituality, all natural systems of heart and almost completely destroyed, and loving service to the personality of Godhead, whose grace and transcendental songs establish the immortal path.
Okay, so reading from Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 31, the movements of the living entities. And we'll read from text 22 through 31, and we'll come back and do the purport of text 29. So we can take turns starting with 22 in your translations. The mental living entity has these desires even while he thus extols the Lord, the wind that helps parturition propels him forth with his face turned downward, so he may be born.
Pushed downward all of a sudden by the wind, the child comes out with great trouble, head downward, breathless, and deprived of memory due to severe agony.
The child thus falls on the ground, smeared with stool and blood. He blazes like a worm, germinated from the stool. He loses his superior knowledge and cries under the spell of Maya.
After coming out of the abdomen, the child is given to the care of a person who are unable to understand what he wants, and thus he is nursed by such person. Unable to refuse whatever is given to him, he falls into undesirable circumstances.
Lay down on a foul bed, infested with sweat and germs. The poor child is incapable of scratching his body to get relief from his itching sensation, to say nothing of sitting up, standing, or even moving.
In his helpless condition, gnats, mosquitoes, bugs, and other germs bite the baby, whose skin is tender, just as smaller worms bite a big worm. The child, deprived of his wisdom, cries bitterly.
In this way, the child passes through his childhood, suffering different kinds of distress, and attains boyhood. In boyhood, he also suffers pain over desires to get things he can never achieve. And thus, due to ignorance, he becomes angry and sorry.
With the growth of the body, the living entity, in order to vanquish his soul, increases his false prestige and anger, and thereby creates enmity towards similarly lusty people.
By such ignorance, the living entity accepts the material body, which is made of 5 elements, as himself. With this misunderstanding, he accepts non-permanent things as his own and increases his ignorance in the darkest region.
For the sake of the body, which is a source of constant trouble to him and which follows him because he is bound by ties of ignorance and fruitive activities, he performs various actions which cause him to be subjected to repeated birth and death.
If therefore the living entity again associates with the path of unrighteousness, influenced by sensually minded people engaged in the pursuit of sexual enjoyment, the gratification of the palate, he again goes to hell as before.
So we go back to text 29. One one quick question. The first verse here, we read 22. The wind that helps parturition. Anybody know what that word parturition means?
Divide?
Hmm?
Oh.
No, that's what I,
Parturition.
yeah, parturition. I've never heard of the word before. This is typical of Śrīmad Prabhupada. It's not his native language, and he knows English better than most English.
It sounds like a petition.
Maybe movement?
No, it means the act of giving childbirth. Parturition.
Labor.
Yeah, the act of labor.
Pushing.
Yeah. Okay, so text 29. Sahadehana manina Vardhamanina manjuna Arati vigraham kami Amishantaya chatmanaha Sahadehana manina Vardhamanina manjuna Arati vigraham kami Amishantaya chatmanaha
Sahadena manena Vardhamanina manuna Karoti vigraham kami Kamish antaya chatmanaha
Sahadehena manena Vardhamanena manyuna Karuti vigraham kami Kamishantaya chatmanaha
With the growth of, the word we can do together. Saha, with the hena, the body, manina, with false prestige, Vardhamana, increases, manuna, on account of anger, Karati, grace, Vigraham, tendencies, Kami, the lusty person, Kamishu, towards other lusty people, Antaya, for destruction, Sha, and Atmana, of his soul. With the growth of the body, the living entity, in order to vanquish his soul, increases his false prestige and anger, and thereby creates enmity towards similarly lusty people. Anyone like to read the first one? There's two paragraphs in the first one. Two moments. 1, 2.
In Bhagavad Gita, 3rd chapter, verse 36, Arjuna inquired from Krishna about the cause of a living being's lust. It is said that a living entity is eternal and as such, qualitatively one with the Supreme Lord. Then what is the reason he falls prey to the material and commits so many sinful activities by the influence of the material energy? In reply to this question, Lord Krishna said that it is lust which causes a living entity to glide down from his exalted position to the abominable condition of material existence. This lust circumstantially changes into anger. Both lust and anger stand on the platform of the mode of passion. Lust is actually the product of the mode of passion, and in the absence of satisfaction of lust, the same desire transforms into anger on the platform of ignorance. When ignorance covers the soul, it is the source of his degradation to the most abominable condition of hellish life.
To rise oneself from hellish life to the highest position of spiritual understanding is to transform this lust into love of Krishna. Sri Naruttama Dasa Thakara, a great Acharya of the Vaishnava Sampradaya, said, Kama Krishna Karma Parne. Due to our lust, we want many things for our sense gratification, but the same lust can be transformed in a purified way so that we want everything for the satisfaction of the Supreme person of God. Anger also can be utilized toward a person who is aesthetic, atheistic, or who is envious of the personality of Godhead. As we have fallen into this material existence because of lust and anger, the same two qualities can be utilized for the purpose of advancing in Krishna consciousness. One can elevate one himself again to the form of pure spiritual position. Srila Rupa Goswami has therefore recommended that because in material existence we have so many objects of sense gratification, which we need for the maintenance of the body, we should use all of them without attachment, for the purpose of satisfying the senses of Krishna, that is actual renunciation.
We're in the second, and that's what the Chaksu, my thoughts, my Shri I was born into darkness, the spiritual message opened my eyes. The first light of knowledge from my business is what you do. So, Srila Prabhupada in this purport, these verses, this whole chapter, talking about the movements of the living entities, it's not the most fun chapter, I guess you could say. It talks about the difficulties of childbirth and life in the womb. And Prabhupada says repeatedly, there's so many things we're trying to solve, so many problems in life we try to solve. And he said, really, the scientists and every living entity, really, he wasn't picking on the scientists. He was just saying the problems that we should be trying to solve, there's just 4 of them. If we solve these 4 problems, every other problem becomes solved. What is that? Birth, death, old age, and disease. And it's easy, or at least for me, it's relatively easy to see. Disease, yeah, that's not so desirable. Old age, that's not so desirable. Death, that's not so desirable. But birth is somewhat cheered in our society. You see it as a wonderful thing. And this chapter kind of shows some of the details that, well, it may be a wonderful thing in some ways. In other ways, it's a very difficult, painful thing. So this chapter is talking about these different movements of living entities. And this verse, particularly in the purport, Prabhupada does an amazing job of taking you from kind of like the whole gamut. It's like nectar instruction, 11 verses, goes from square one to the topmost spiritual heights in just 11 verses. Here Prabhupada's taking you from this hellish position of ignorance and passion and that cycle of falling into the material modes, all the way up to transforming with Rupa Goswami and this quote which we talked about the highest realms of love of God. So it's quite amazing to do that in two paragraphs. The beginning part is this idea of lust. So I want to ask, I guess, what this talks about. It doesn't use the word sinful activities per se, but it talks about how lust can drag us down. There's a famous verse in the Bhagavad Gita about how we meditate on the objects of our senses, lust, attachment develops in lust and anger, and we don't get an illusion, and we fall into illusion. So what is this? How do you define, if somebody asked you, somebody read our books and they see this term, sinful activities, what are sinful activities? Who can answer or explain or define? What do we mean when we say sinful activities?
But just doing anything that helps you forget about God, not thinking about God. If you're doing anything that just not thinking about God, you're doing some sort of sin, missing the mark.
Very good, very good. That's excellent. Anyone else?
Doing things that are unnatural or against nature,
Natural, against nature. Very
or
good.
breaking the nature's laws.
Very good.
I think the actual definition is without, so without God.
Without God, yeah, that's kind of what he was.
And
Yes.
just like in the real world, breaking a law means breaking established rules and regulations. The same way it's breaking a rules and regulations established by Dharma and by, Krishna.
So there's a set order of things, you go against that, and you're breaking that. So these are all correct answers. This is very good. And it talks about the result of that. And the result of these either it could be the cause of these activities. I guess ultimately it's the cause of them, but also the result of them is that we become deeper and deeper in ignorance, and we become separated. It may be that state of separation that caused us to do these activities. We're going against the established order. We're going against our nature. The problem, I don't remember the Sanskrit verse, but one of the problems or the difficulties with engaging material activity or sinful activity is you get certain reactions. If you do something wrong, there's a reaction. And one of the reactions you get, in addition to whatever other reactions may be there, depending on what you did, one of the reactions you get is the desire to do that thing again. And so it creates this downward spiral. And so it takes us, as we become more engrossed in ignorance, the more one becomes covered by that, and the more their lives just becomes very, very hellish. So the thing we have to understand or tap into, Prabhupada talks here about this lust, right? Lust turns into anger and passion. And the last sentence of the first paragraph, when ignorance covers the soul, is the source of its degradation to the most abominable conditions of hellish life. So this lust or this ignorance, this separation, it's very, very dangerous. It really takes us in the wrong direction. So how do we deal with that? How do we combat it? And the first thing to understand is that the lust, the driving, generally speaking, that there's a cycle, that we have some pain difficulty, so we seek some comfort in material energies, we seek some gratification, something to dull our pain. And depending on what mode we're in, mode of ignorance, mode of passion, that thing may be, it may be different things. Some people take shelter in music, some people take shelter in food, or some people take shelter in money or intoxicants, whatever, but we're looking to get rid of that pain. But the problem is by engaging in true energies and looking to these things to give us some pleasure, some relief, it just takes us deeper into that cycle. We become more entangled. And so one of the first things we need to do is understand, don't feel guilty, don't feel bad. That desire for pleasure, that desire for relief, that desire for enjoyment, that's natural. That's inherent in the soul. We're pleasure-seeking entities, you could say. Every living entity has, on the highest philosophical level, which we'll get into a little bit more, but we're seeking for Krishna. Everyone's looking for some satisfaction. The only satisfaction you can get is from Krishna. But because they don't have the knowledge or understanding of that, they look for it, or we look for it, in these material things through the senses. So one of the first things we have to understand about the cycle is these senses, it's like a fish out of water. You take a fish out of water, you put it on a velvet blanket, you feed it nice foodstuffs. It could care less. It just wants to go back in the water. It doesn't matter how you treat it, it just wants to be in the water. So in the same way, we're a fish out of water. We don't belong in this material world. It's this big pressure cooker just designed to make our life difficult. And until we understand that, then we keep seeking some pleasures here. But when we understand that the pleasure we're seeking is actually we're looking for to reestablish this relationship with God. But out of lack of knowledge, it goes out through our senses. So first we have to turn it around and go inward and stop trying to get pleasure through these senses. And then the last, in this second paragraph, it mentions here Rupa Goswami. So we'll talk about transform. So how do we do that? So we understand, okay, lust is just misdirected. I have a pure desire for Krishna, but I don't know how to fulfill it, so I misdirect it to the senses. So how do we direct it properly? And that's what the second paragraph in this purport talks about, how to transform that lust and transform it into the pure love for Krishna. That's already there in the heart. Krishna consciousness isn't about adding something or giving us something. It's about basically uncovering and reminding you what's already in there. We already have that love for Krishna. It's just being misdirected. So Rupa Goswami, is everyone familiar with Rupa Goswami? Is anyone not familiar with Rupa Goswami? So he's very important to us. And he's quoted here in the end about this yukta vairagya. It's one of the terms he coined. I don't know if he coined it, but he made it easy for us to understand as yukta vairagya. Of course, he's written many books on the science of love of God. Love, Krishna consciousness, or bhakti yoga, it is a science. What does that mean? Science means if you do this and this and this, you'll get this result. It's a scientific process. I mean, a very simple explanation of it. But so it's so many books he's written, Nectar of Devotion, Nectar of Instruction, a lot of other books about Krishna's pastimes. And it describes the science of love of God. And this yukta vairagya is one of those principles. One translation I like is appropriate renunciation. So it's yes, we renounce things that aren't useful in Krishna's service. We use things that are useful in Krishna's service. This is yukta vairagya. So why are we so fond of Rupa Goswami? Why are we? Sometimes we're called Rupa Nugas, followers of Rupa. Who can tell me why that is? Why is he so dear to us? What's one of the reasons he's so dear to us?
He was Lord Chaitanya's primary disciple.
Yes, exactly. He understood the mood and mission of Lord Chaitanya. Right? You've probably all heard this prayer. If you haven't, you will. You can repeat it with me for those of you who know it. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapanam Swayam Rupa Kadamaya Dati Swapadam. What does that mean? When will Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada, who has established within this material world the mission to fulfill the desire of Lord Chaitanya, give me shelter under his lotus feet? So he understands the mission and the mood. He took Lord Chaitanya's inner desires and he put them into writing, into these different books, so that we could understand. And what is that mission? What does Lord Chaitanya want? A very famous verse. You don't hear the Sanskrit this lot, but I'm sure you've all heard the English. Priti Viti Achayata Nagaradi Grama Sarvatra Pachara Haive Mora Nama. In every town and village, the chanting of my name will be heard. Right? This was Lord Chaitanya's desire, is that every living entity can hear his holy names. And why is that important to him? Because his holy names, by chanting his holy names, then we can get to this transformation of lust to love. Right? That's our goal, is to develop that love for Krishna. And what is the difference between lust and love? Right? There's a nice description from Krishna's Kaviraj gives in Chaitanya Charitamrita text Adi Lila 4:165. The desire to gratify one's own senses, is lust. The desire to please the senses of Lord Krishna is prema, or love. So the important point here to understand is there's still a desire involved. The desire doesn't go away. Prabhupada said if you're desireless, then you're dead. A dead body is desireless. If you're alive, you have desires. So there's nothing wrong with desires. They're going to be there. The question is, what are those desires going to be aimed at? What are we going to desire? What are we going to desire? And so this verse gives us that definition. If we're desiring something for our pleasure, a lot of times we have difficulties and we think, what am I going to do about this? What am I going to do about that? What happens if this happens? What am I going to do? And the question of anxiety is I. It's just all about me. As opposed to what does Krishna want? What is Krishna, how can I bring satisfaction to Krishna? Because the mind is very selfish. The mind wants to focus on me. But when we understand the reality that I'm part and parcel of Krishna, if Krishna is happy, I'll be happy. It's guaranteed. I can't not be happy. Because if Krishna's pleased, I'm part of him. And so we have to fight that selfish tendency, think I need to look out. And this is one of the problems of being raised in America, is that you're taught from a very early age that you're number one. You have to look out for yourself, and no one else is going to look out for you. And your desires are important, your needs are important. It's all about you. It's all about me. It's all about the individual. And so we have to break out of that and say, no, I'm insignificant. Krishna's important. And when we think that way and act that way, then Krishna becomes pleased. Then we're automatically pleased. Krishna loves us more than we love ourselves. He cares about our good fortune more than we do. So if we're focused on satisfying Krishna's will, his desires, then our needs will be taken care of. It's guaranteed. So this is what we have to train our mind to think like this. So then we understand the difference between love and lust. Lust is satisfying my own senses, but if I look to satisfy Krishna's senses, this is love. That's the translation. The purport here is very powerful, and it's very elevated, and it gives us a goal. Sometimes we think, well, that's above me, I'm not on that level. And that's true. We may not always be on the platform, the level of these things that we're reading, but it's very important to know the goal. Where are we going? What's the mentality I should try to be cultivating? What's the reality that I want to be on someday? And so the purport is a short purport. It says the revealed scriptures describe pure love as follows. It's one of my favorite verses. It's not actually a verse in the book, but it's a verse in the purport quoted. It says, if there is ample reason for the dissolution of a conjugal relationship, and yet such a dissolution does not take place, such a relationship of intimate love is called pure. So does everyone get that? Does everyone get what's being said here? No. So there's a relationship between two people, and there are multiple reasons for that relationship to be broken. Could be external reasons, somebody, this person did something, that person did something, I did something, they did something. Things happen that give cause, okay, that's it, I'm done. I can't, what you did, I can't tolerate, I'm out of here. When there are multiple causes for a relationship to be broken, but the relationship is not broken, this is love. To put it another way, in the Shikshastika, the last verse, who can quote the last verse of the Shikshastika?
No.
I have a printout here if anybody wants. You guys are better than I am.
I know the Krishna is my Lord. He shall remain so to him through love and kindness and grace, who makes me brokenhearted by not being present before me. He's completely free to do anything and everything that comes on his mind.
Exactly. That's what's being said here. He can do anything he wants. And what's interesting to me in that verse is it's not, usually when you give someone a statement, you'll say, well, if something is good or something's not so good, as two comparisons. This one doesn't do that. This one says you can treat me bad or you can treat me worse. Nowhere in there it says you can treat me good. Well, I guess it does say something about not being present or not embracing. So it refers to it. But the connotations are negative, right? Whether you make me brokenhearted, so you break my heart by not embracing me. Or what's the other one on my mind? It's going to blink. Not being present before me, or handles me roughly. So you can break my heart by abandoning me, or you can treat me badly. Both of those are negatives. It doesn't matter. I'm still going to love you because you're lovable, and I love you, and I don't care how you treat me. So that's what's being said in this verse. that there's ample reason for the dissolution of a relationship, right? You broke my heart, or you treated me bad. But this dissolution is not complete fixed. This relationship this love is pure. And when we have that mood of pure love for Krishna, he becomes purchased. He said, that's it. Then he becomes the servitor of his devotee and said, if you love me that much, then Krishna says, the famous verse in the 10th canto, not on, I can't repay that kind of love. I can't. That love is so pure that all I can do is be indebted to you. And so then Krishna uses all of his vast resources, the supreme personality of Godhead, to try to reciprocate and demonstrate and manifest his love and reciprocation. So this is the goal of this transformation of lust, of trying to get pleasure to our senses versus trying to give pleasure to Krishna. The result, one will never be the loser if one undergoes some difficulty or sacrifices something for the pleasure of Krishna. Our mind will tell us the opposite all the time. Oh, no, don't do that, you'll suffer. Don't do that, that's a little bit too much. But when we surrender something or sacrifice something or try to even think about how can I do something that's pleasing to Krishna, and then he becomes purchased. And this love is very powerful. I'll just read the last part of this purport. The predominated gopis were bound to Krishna in such pure love. For them, there was no question of sexual love based on sense gratification. Their only engagement in life was to see Krishna happy in all respects, regardless of their own personal interests. They dedicated their souls only for the satisfaction of the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. There was not the slightest tinge of sexual love between the gopis and Krishna. And again, because they weren't looking for their own pleasure, they were simply looking for the pleasure of Krishna. And so this is prema. This is the natural inclination that's there in the soul already. And by going against that inclination, instead of trying to manifest or express our love for Krishna, we divert it and seek pleasure through the senses, and that's the simple activity we talked about. And we're going against the order of things, we're going against our nature, and then we become entangled. And so this is this transformation that's talked about in the second paragraph. This is the goal of life, is to transform this lust into love. I had another question, or I thought I did, but yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question.
Fire away.
I just maybe thank you for this class. It was very nice. I was just maybe wondering if you could like poke holes in this train of thought, or even if you just have comments on it. Like how can we, Krishna has millions of gopis, millions of cowherd boys, everyone he could ever want. Like how can we be so sure that he even wants our love? What?
It's a good question. Well, the first evidence of it, or proof of it, is that you exist. Right? The fact that you exist is proof that he wants your love because he created you to give it to him. He said, look, because you were created unique, right? You have different nature than I do, different likes, dislikes, every living. We all have different, we may have a lot of things in common, but we're all unique, we're all different. And you have the capability, you and each of you, not just Narada, but all of you, have the ability to give Krishna pleasure that no one else has. There's some quality, some service you can give Krishna, which will make him very happy that no one else is capable of doing. And he knows that, and he created you for that relationship. He says, look, you and me, we're connected. And so that's why you exist. And so the fact that you exist, in my mind, or my understanding, proves that he has that love for you. That's one answer. The other answer is in the Shastras, repeatedly. It talks about, when you read Bhagavad Gita, you can read it as Krishna speaking to Arjuna. But you keep in mind, Arjuna was a pure devotee. He was friends with Krishna. They were tight. right? He doesn't need to be instructed. He knows all these things. But Krishna put him in this state of forgetfulness to ask these questions. I can't do my duty, I can't fight, what do I do? So that Krishna could reveal this knowledge for us. So when you read Bhagavad Gita, you can say, well, Krishna said this to Arjuna. No, well, Krishna said this to you. When Krishna says this, he's speaking to me. That's why Bhagavad Gita exists. So we can understand our relationship with Krishna. So Arjuna was the vehicle to make that happen. But it's there in the Shastras that Krishna loves it. And we can see it in the pastimes of the gopis and the gopas, Krishna's friends, girlfriends and boyfriends. When the boys were having lunch together, every one of them, Krishna was sitting right next to them. There were hundreds of boys there, but Krishna sitting next to me. They didn't see all the other Krishnas. They saw the one sitting next to him. The same with the gopis. And so Krishna, it's incomprehensible. There's so many living entities yet Krishna knows I exist and he cares about me. Does that answer? I don't know if that helps.
You did.
Yeah, I think it was interesting that you asked that question because I was thinking about it yesterday how Krishna is the supreme and how he's so powerful to the effect that even the people who don't believe in him or even the people who reject him, he still supports.
Yeah.
Like that's how powerful and that's how supreme he is.
There's no envy.
Yeah, and I think another proof of that, of him wanting our love, is also the option of choice that we can choose him. I think that you can either choose me or reject me. That's like the ultimate act.
Free will.
Yeah.
That's a really good point. Free will. For years I used to pray, Krishna, why don't you just make me do the right thing? Don't give me a choice. Just make me, Well, he could do that, but then we're robots, right? That's not love. Love has to be given voluntarily. So very good. Thank you for that. You had,
Hare Krishna, thank you so much for class. Yeah, I was thinking about the last verse of Shikshastakam. Even if he leaves me brokenhearted along those lines by not being present before me. So it's like I was kind of thinking about how to feel Krishna's presence when it may not be so I don't know, it may not feel accessible to us to feel his presence. So what can help us feel Krishna's presence in daily life?
well, that's a great question. What comes to mind, of course, this is very exalted, but what comes to mind is recently I saw a video, it was recorded several years ago, in the Maharaj was in Vrindavan talking about these things. And he mentioned how Radharani, in some ways, was happier when she wasn't with Krishna than when she was with Krishna. Because when she was with Krishna, there was one Krishna. When she was separate from him, there was a bazillion Krishnas. Because she saw Krishna everywhere. This tree reminds her of Krishna, this water reminds her of Krishna, this flower. Everything she saw reminded her of Krishna. And so she could think of him almost more intensely than when she was actually with Krishna. So that's a very high topic. I'm not really qualified to speak of this whole separation, love and separation and union. But that's one way is just to try to see. And I was taught as a young devotee, and I still subscribe to it, that it's beneficial to look for signs of Krishna's reciprocation. Because he's reciprocating with us all the time, but most times we just brush it aside. So that's just coincidence, that just happened. It's like, no, Krishna's doing things. And so we look for those. And then another one that I find is helpful is to just memorize verses, find songs that when when you're driving or just doing something, because these sound vibrations, there's a nice song that I like sometimes when my mind is blank or I'm spaced out or I'm feeling like you're feeling like I'm not feeling Krishna's presence. For now, I'm probably nervous I'll forget it. See if I can remember how it goes. Krishna Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nanda Gopa Kumar Govinda Mama. I'll just sing it over and over and over. One time my wife and I were driving somewhere 2 hours, we just sang that song the whole time. And it's just names of Krishna. It's Krishna and his associates. And then you start thinking of Krishna. You start getting absorbed in him. And oftentimes, as we remember him and get absorbed in him, then we remember times that he reciprocated with us, did something, and then we may not be feeling his presence then, but we remember times when we did. Remember experiences when we did. And in the spiritual world, spiritual energy, remembering a time when Krishna reciprocated with you is non-different from Krishna reciprocating you right now. I mean, there's no time and space in spirituality, right? If he did it then, his pastimes are eternal. They're always happening. So, I don't know if that's right. What you do. I think there was an hand over here. And then there was one there. It was too many for me to follow.
I have a similar question, but it was a twist.
Okay.
When I was a little boy, I remember one time for one month, I forgot how it came out. She told me, she practiced for decades. She told me I could never be gopi. I could never be brokenhearted, separated. And I thought to myself, well, it's true. The only experience of separation we have in the world is quite ugly. It's quite terrible. So how do we have this limited experience apply it to the world? Because that's all we know, is just pain and
Yeah, that's a great question. It's a great question, and I'm not qualified to answer this, but my understanding of, based on what I've read and heard from Prabhupada in his books, is that that separation they're talking about, Vipralamba is the word that comes to mind, that separation is that you're so absorbed in Krishna. So when Krishna went to Mathura and he left Vrindavan, the gopis were distraught, of course, and he sent a messenger back to why is his name escaping me? Uddhava, to speak to them, and he sent a message saying, well, at night when you're remembering me and you're having these dreams aren't dreams. I'm there with you. Don't think that's a dream. I'm actually with you. So in the spiritual, the heights, the spiritual reality that we're talking about, that separation, that feeling of hankering from Krishna becomes, you actually aren't separated. You actually, I can't explain it, but it's like you're not actually separated. Because when you understand, we think linear in terms of this body, my body, separate from your body, everything's mechanical and material. But in the spiritual world, we're part and parcel of Krishna. We're part and parcel of Krishna. Like as long as Bhakti Swami talks about when we study the Bhagavatam and we understand these material energies, spiritual energies, all energies come from Krishna, and we really understand the reality behind what is, then we start to see that there's no way, it's physically impossible to be separated from Krishna ever. And when we understand that, then fear dissipates and we realize that we're always connected to him. It's just perception. Sometimes it looks like we are, sometimes it looks like we aren't. And so it's a different kind of separation they're talking about than what we experience in this world. And that's the best part of it.
I haven't thought on that point.
Yeah, there was a question over here, and I don't know, my time is getting almost over,
we'll
but.
wait for breakfast to come in.
Okay, go ahead. And then someone over here.
Yeah, I thought it's interesting, the separation. And actually, it seems that all the residents of Goloka Vrindavan, they have to deal with separation from Krishna. So the cows, they go out with Krishna, and then Krishna goes back home and he goes to bed, and the cows are missing him the whole night. Same thing with the cowherd boys. I was hearing like Sridham, he was like crying so much because this is Indra Maharaj's lecture. He's crying because Krishna has to go home now, and then actually the whole town, they come to the outskirts of the village just to watch Krishna come back home. So
there's a whole drama that happens every day with his mother, right? He showed us, I can't let him go, and then she thought that she goes back, and finally he has to say, no, go, and it's very intense. It's like pains, you can't have no separation. And that's a good point. Thank you for that. Yeah, the cow, it's not just the gopis. Cows go through, cowherd boys, the Deva Prabhu.
Krishna. I actually didn't have my hand, but you read my mind. And I see it, I'll take it as encouragement. Speaking about transforming lust into love, there's this really nice book by Swami Bhakti Maharaj, entitled just that, like that, transforming lust into love. It's a spiritual warrior number 2. And it comes in the purport, so for those of you who want to know more, so appendix, you can see as an extension to the purport today. You can take a deep dive, and it's appropriate. Yesterday was just his birthday, so we can reflect on that. But on the topic of feeling separation, I think there's a requirement in order to understand or feel separation, or let's just say understand. One has to understand the attachment, because you can't have separation unless you have attachment.
That's a really good point. And their attachment was intense.
So let's do one thing at a time, and let's work on that first. Another thing that comes in the purport for me was Prabhupada just touches on, but it's so like on the point from that Narottam Das Thakur's excerpt. I think it's from the second song from Prema Bhakti Chandrika, which is the moonlight of the flow of God. And it's so beautiful. I mean, that whole song, I think I will attach it to a residential. There's a total of 9 songs, but what Prabhupada quotes is from song 2. It's so beautiful. That also will help us understand attachment and separation.
Yeah, that's a really good point about attachment, because it's true. If you're not attached to something and you lose it, you don't care. It's like, okay, well, whatever. But
sometimes you're glad
you're glad, okay, okay, that's good. But when there's strong attachment, and the stronger that attachment is, the more that separation is painful. That's
Hare Krishna, thank you for class. I was just thinking about the devotees and the question that she brought up about perceiving Krishna. We do devotional service every day, but are we thinking of the devotional part of the service? Right?
Yeah.
So when we are going to create a party for someone, we think about that person in all the details. And they're with us in that whole meditation. We imagine their face, we imagine them coming in, we imagine them how their reaction will be. And this also brings us personally closer to that person. So just as a reminder.
That's an excellent point, because you can be doing your service with the mind of, okay, as soon as I'm done, then I can go do something else, and you're not focused on what you're doing. Well, I need to do this right now because then later I want to do this other thing, and you're not going to be thinking about Krishna so much. I remember, yeah, it's a good point. It's a really good point. I remember I mentioned revolving door before, and I think maybe I didn't explain it right, but I've been through revolving door many times in my life, and I never left Krishna consciousness, but revolving meaning living physically in the temple or living outside the temple. And I'd be living in the temple and I'd be looking at houses and cars thinking, well, if I was outside, I could be doing this and this, and my mind isn't in the temple. And then I would be outside thinking, well, if I was living in the temple, I'd be doing this and this. And so it's like, and that cycle went through a couple of times. I lived in the temple, moved out, moved in the temple, moved different states. And I realized over time that it doesn't matter. In or out is the question. It doesn't matter if you're living here or you're living there, or where you sleep at night. What matters is exactly what you're saying. What am I doing with my energies? What am I doing with my time? Am I thinking about Krishna? Am I trying to serve him? And then wherever you are is the temple. And so that's thank you for that point. That's really nice. So I should probably stop there. Breakfast not here. Anyone else? There's another hand.
Would you say though because you mentioned how Krishna, he can't like force us to do anything, but would you agree that Krishna can put us in a situation where we kind of really don't have so much of a better option than choosing Krishna?
Absolutely. If our desire is sincere in Krishna, it's described. This is a hard thing to say, it's a hard thing to hear. But if Krishna likes us, he'll give us things. If he loves us, he'll take things away. And this is repeated in many different places, that for a pure devotee, or even if they're not pure, if someone has sincere desire for Krishna, then it's not unheard of. It may not be common, but sometimes Krishna will do things to make that devotee, make it easier for them. He did this for Prabhupada. Prabhupada had a business, Krishna took it away. And it made it very easy for Prabhupada to treat sannyas because this business failed. And so sometimes if someone is very sincere in their endeavor and their desire to serve Krishna, Krishna will do things in their life to give them no choice than to do that. That happened to me in my life. Anyway, long story, different things happened, and I ended up with no place to live. I was basically homeless, sleeping in my car, my friend's house, my sister's house. And then Mukunda Goswami asked me, "Would you like to come live with me and help me in my service?" So my desire, I had made choices previous to that created some material difficulty, but my motivation was I want to be close to Krishna, so I'm not going to do this. I'm going to do this. If I do this, basically I had my last paycheck. I left my job, and I could fix my car or pay my rent. I couldn't do both. If I pay my rent, then I have no car. I can't go to the temple. The temple's an hour away. But I could eventually find another job and get my car fixed and go. If I fix my car and go to the temple, I had no place to live. So I chose to fix the car because at that point in my life, I couldn't tolerate not being able to go to the temple because I was in a bad state and I knew I have to go to the temple, otherwise I would be insane. That was my only shelter. So then several months of difficulty resulted from that decision. And Krishna said, "Okay, since you want me here, why don't you just come live in the apartment?" It was all right. I had a place to live. I had good association. The spiritual life was fixed. So since you want me, I'm going to take all these other things away. I'm going to make it real easy for you that you have a choice to do this. You don't have any other choices. What do you want to do? And so, that's a long-winded answer to your question. Does that answer your question? And conversely, if someone doesn't want God, Prabhupada says, if you want to forget God, don't give the intelligence to forget him forever. If someone wants to be an atheist, they want to forget about him, Krishna will, okay, if that's what you want, then to your point, he has no envy. Like, if you want to go away from me, then I'll help you do that, but it's not in their best interest. So, yeah, anyway. We're ready for it.
I presume there was a little Mahaprasad. And close, that close.
Yeah.
Close, you have to fight very warm life. But on the point of does Krishna really care about us earlier when we started? There was some time there was so many servants, Saharshva, Lakshmi, infinite gopis to servant, as we hear from Brahma Samhita. Prabhupada gave example of a pinky, or like any small part of the body. No matter how insignificant, if it is detached from the body, it will mean a lot to you to put it together.
That's a great point.
No matter how small we are part of him, and it affects him.
If you stub your toe, you can't think about anything else. And so when this little insignificant parts can disconnect from Krishna, he feels it. He's like, that's a really good example, I think. Okay, and got my cue here. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki, Śrīmad-Prabhupada ki, all rise to some of the
Govinde Nama Brahma Darshane Swamanyam Rajan Fortunate persons develop faith in Mahaprasad, spiritual food from the Lord, in the deity of Sri Govinda, supreme personality of Godhead, the transcendence of Krishna, and Vaishnava.
Bhagavatam ki.
I was